Welcome back to the DYOJO Podcast. We've had quite a hiatus. I did have a chance to be on IAQ Radio, the OGs of property restoration podcasting. Looking forward to going to the experience and speaking on a panel this coming week in Vegas. That's now put on by R&R Magazine. And got a couple of things to catch up on. We still got a lot of content that we filmed this year that haven't put out yet, so going to mess around with formatting once again and the content. But the word of the day today is puttering. You can look it up or you can listen and hear what we have to say about puttering.
Ba-dum-ba.
Welcome back to the DYOJO Podcast.
Hi, everybody out there, DYOJO Nation. This is the Global Watchdog, Pete Consigli.
Here at the DYOJO Podcast, our mission is simple: to help contractors shorten their dang learning curve.
DYOJO Podcast!
It should also be noted that the views and opinions expressed on this podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of any organization, company, or sponsor.
You have entered the DYOJO Podcast. Cast.
I was thinking about something the other day. You know, we have this, shall we call it, infatuation with copying what we perceive, copying successful people. People, we perceive them to be successful, we want to copy them, want to imitate them, mimic them, or as the psychological term, mirror them, puttering. Say, one of the videos that popped up was Steve Jobs.
I've built a lot of my success off finding these truly gifted people.
If Steve Jobs were alive, could he today take the same things he did to create Apple and replicate them? And I think arguably he couldn't, because all of what Apple did changed the way everybody else does business. You think of consultants or people that have successfully started a business, sold it, and then go to start another one or try another industry. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but they have to adapt. So maybe that's the lessons learned. And I've been thinking a lot myself about, there's this video of Steve Jobs saying, you got to get A players.
And not settling for B and C players, but really going for the A players. And I found something.
And then when you get A players in a room with other A players, they just feed off of each other. They love it. It creates an environment they like.
And they don't want to work with B and C players. And so it becomes self-policing. And they only want to hire more A players. And so you build up these pockets of A players, and it propagates.
And I don't know why that stuck with me, but I've been thinking about whether I believe that. You say we want A players, we want superstars, we want ninjas. And is it not at all saying that I'm any of those things? But I think if we sat in a room and reflected, the things that have made me successful are, just sticking to it, like being persistent. Pete Consigli, who's part of the opening for the podcast, and those of you that know,
It's going to be fabulous.
just a connector when it comes to recalling and knowing people from property restoration history, which is the subsector of construction that I'm most involved in on a day-to-day. And, that was part of cracking the code of getting into his circle, was just being persistent, being a persistent bastard. I think that's one of the best compliments I can get from people is, you're a persistent bastard. And so I am a bastard, and I'm persistent. I didn't have a choice over the first part of that, but I have had a choice over the second part. Like persistence or working through, it's not, knowing when to keep pushing and knowing when to change course are two very important things, because sometimes you quit just before you're about to make a breakthrough, and then sometimes you don't know when to quit and just burn yourself out and others out and waste a lot of resources, but you don't know. So you have to analyze risk, be willing to take risks, the right risks, and then know when to hold them, know when to fold them. But something came up, I think it was on Instagram, about the Jeff Bezos 1 hour rule. I was like, what the hell is that? Puttering. So it's a morning routine where he avoids screens and other distractions for the first hour of the day to engage in puttering. So we've got these great terms. It's the 1 hour rule, and I putter. Puttering. And if you ever listen, I sit around and I putter.
Puttering time is very important to me.
Puttering. My favorite picture of Jeff Bezos is the one where he's in the, he's got the old metal desk and it's like Amazon spray painted on a bed sheet or something like that, and he's bald and he's just skinny and, now, he's cool, right? He's jacked.
Cup of coffee in the big time.
And the company's didn't make money for many, many years and is now very successful. And so, that's another model. How many of us could lose money for, 2 decades and then emerge? I guess credit to them, had vision for, we're basically going to change the way people buy things. Back to puttering. The first hour of the day, no screens, putter. A period of slow, intentional activities like reading, drinking coffee, and reflecting. This practice, basically what every pre-Gen X, and maybe many of the Gen X do, just sit down on the porch.
Cup of coffee in the big time.
That first cup of coffee in the morning and, listen to the birds. This practice, he claims, improves his intelligence and focus, involves allowing the mind space to wander and prepare for demanding tasks, rather than immediately jumping into emails or notifications.
I go to bed early. I get up early. I like to putter in the mornings. I like to read the newspaper. I like to have coffee. I like to have breakfast with my kids before they go to school. So I have my kind of puttering time is very important to me.
Apparently, neuroscience supports this, indicating that screen-free, low-stimulation start to the day can improve brain function, memory, and decision-making. No screens, engage in activities that allow the mind to rest and wander, do intentional activities like having a leisurely breakfast, enjoying coffee, or going for a walk. No rushing. It's about a slow, deliberate start to the day. Puttering. Supposed benefits: enhanced clarity and focus, better decision-making, improved mood and less anxiety, boosted brain function, and mental preparedness. Anyways, thought that was interesting. What are your thoughts? What are your habits? Puttering. Speaking of reading, puttering, habits for success, in our book, So You Want to Be a Project Manager, on page 56, talk about the need for speed. Project management is all about managing the project to completion according to the scope, on time, and on budget. The scope is based upon estimated time and material costs to complete the work. We will break this down more in the next chapter. You can begin to master these basics, even as a technician or carpenter, by simply setting daily objectives for yourself. If you know what you will be doing tomorrow, you can set out your materials the night before. Have a plan for how you will be efficient throughout the day, and document for your supervisor that you have met or exceeded the benchmarks that you set for yourself. For example, when you arrive on a project, you can use the following acronym to develop your work speed. This stands for scan, plan, execute, and document. Use this sequence to set your own goals with your team and see if you can meet them. This is reverse engineering your production rates and will help you better understand over time what you should be capable of on a regular basis. If you document your goals and how consistently you have met or beat them, this data will be helpful in showing value to your supervisors as well as for your own point of reference when you become a project manager. Scan, plan, execute, document.
John Isaacson's new book. It's everything you want in a gift. It has a cover, it has pages, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
But we have a couple of books on estimating project management and how to set yourself up for success.
Show her you really love her with John Isaacson's new book, So You Want to Be a Project Manager.
All right, so we have Jeff Bezos's puttering.
Puttering time is very important to me.
We talked a little bit about Steve Jobs' A players.
Truly gifted people.
If you're thinking about, for you personally, whether it's Steve Jobs saying, I've found success in doing this, that means I've tried this, this is what has worked, right? Trial and error. And then Jeff Bezos. It is kind of funny, listening to people look back and talk about what they thought made themselves successful. And so now, it would seem it's easy for Jeff Bezos to putter, to wake up in the morning and spend an hour doing nothing, but thinking and reading. The rest of us, I got kids! Nobody's got time for that, I got to get my butt to work. I stayed up too late last night, so maybe it's not an hour, maybe it's 15 minutes. Maybe, it's just that quick practice. I think we all know it's probably better not to be looking at your screen just before you go to bed, right? Try to let your mind wind down. So, what are some practical ways that people in the real world are trying to create some of those things for themselves and their team? One of the advantages of going out in the field and interviewing other restoration contractors, we got to talk at H2O Away in Lacey, Washington. And since they've actually moved a little further down south to Tumwater, Washington, to a bigger facility to help meet their current growth and give them room to grow into.
So we've kind of come full circle a couple times,
I mean, you guys started and it took off, right? And then COVID and employee issues.
We just really gave it a hard shot this last go around. And pre-COVID, we probably had 8 to 10 employees and we were doing 35, 40 jobs a month.
When we were at their property there in Lacey, we got to talk to some of the team leaders who have had experience working with other companies. They talked about how, there's more transparency. They talk with leadership. Leadership is accessible.
First Wednesday of the month, we go back to last month's data, and each crew chief or lead has a generated revenue that they worked that month, and then their job costs that month. And these guys are we were generated that data per truck per lead on their revenue and job average costs per the jobs that they did.
Then you can have an honest conversation about what can we do better. Or,
exactly. And then it's great because they're competitive, but it's a friendly competition.
Yeah.
And then they want to, I want to be like Jacob, or I want to be like James. How do I get there?
There's some real positive peer pressure,
right? And here's what we need to do.
This is Zach from H2O Away. He says something really important about setting clear goals with your team members, even your team members in the field. I mean, we all want, you got to make more money, but do we break it down? If you did this, this, and this, that would lead to better outcomes, help the company, and make you more valuable. Things that you can do in the field that lead to that outcome, but also this is what we're tracking. So if you do more of this, you will stand out. And I remember my first job in the industry, 2002, I went to the yellow team. I answered an ad for carpet cleaning, and I got on a mold remediation team down in Ventura, California. Beautiful Ventura, California. And I remember my boss telling me, hey, we get paid based off of paperwork. So, it's counterintuitive. You're there to work and, rip things out and clean mold up, clean up the M word. But, it is important that you sit down at the end of the day and fill your paperwork out so that we can translate that into an invoice from the insurance company and make sure that we capture everything that we did legitimately. And so when I heard that, I was like, okay, one of the keys to success, those of you listening that are maybe starting out your career, is make your boss, your supervisor's job easier. So if they're telling you something, listen, do it, and then see where that takes you. A lot of times it's just doing the basic things, the simple things really well will stand out. And I know my first promotion was because I filled out my paperwork and it was readable. And I had to work at that. Like, my handwriting is not the greatest. So sometimes I'd take it home and rewrite. I'd chicken scratch in the field and then rewrite it. And that led to one of my first promotions in this industry, just doing what your boss tells you to do. Pretty crazy. Show up, do what you're told, have a good attitude. It's pretty amazing what things can happen, from there.
Everybody within that department is just so motivated to be the best.
Yeah.
To be the absolute best we can be. And one thing I love to say is, team, how can we be 1% better today? Because if 1% better every day, you're 5% better in a week.
Yeah.
You're 30% better in a month.
Yeah.
And that's just effort there. That 1%, what can I do to be 1% better than I was yesterday?
What says you, DYOJO Nation? I mean, I like that concept in the sense that you're giving somebody something simple. Like, I'm not asking you to change the world. I'm just asking you to, we've had conversations about the metrics. We've had conversations about what you could, so you know where your standing is, right? If you go to this H2O example, you know where you are in the roster of your truck, how much revenue per truck, how much cost per truck this 2-person team is creating. And then, hey, if you want to get to this level, all you got to think about is how today am I a little bit better than I was yesterday? And that compounds, that continuous, intentional mindset, that intentional habits add up over time. You as an employee become better, become more valuable. Hopefully when those reviews come up and those kinds of things, you're top of the list. And then that helps your team excel. It helps the organization grow. And I mean, that's how the whole thing works, right? How do we add just a little bit of flair to our customer service? How are we cleaner, more efficient when we work? How do we make sure everybody has the information they need to make the right decision and get this project done? So that's great. Zach, actually, again, this is Zach. We pan over to Kevin just for a minute. This is part of the team members there at H2O Away, which is now in a little further south in Tumwater, Washington. So these are people doing it day in and day out for contractors by contractors, the DYOJO Podcast.
Because that 1% is massive. Even if you look at our revenue, if we have, our revenue's this, but if we could have had 5% more, that could have
productivity
been this, right? So that's where that 1% better mindset for these guys, and they love it. They love that. They use it all the time. They're like, I'm 1% today, 1% today.
You might we were talking with Taylor about, I think it was a quote attributed to Kobe, but it was to be extraordinary, you just do the ordinary extra, so shoot those extra free throws, a couple of wind sprints, those kind of things. And
that's 100%, because that's what it takes it's just, how can I get that extra edge?
Yeah.
How can I get that extra little bit?
Taking that emulation, right? There's some concepts from Bezos. I do think one of the encouraging things is that picture. You can have a spray painted logo and a crappy desk, and who knows what you can build if you stick to it and get the right people around you. I think this part from what Steve Jobs says is something that does resonate.
And they don't want to work with B and C players, and so it becomes self-policing, and they only want to hire more A players. And so you build up these pockets of A players, and it propagates.
I think if you reverse engineer that a bit, there's a quote I heard: every leader, are you listening, managers, owners, people in a position of leadership, every leader has the team that they deserve. And if you think about that, it's not that far off, because you friggin' hired them, right? Whether it's you hired this group of managers, and whether or not they're implementing the business the way that you envisioned, is your team operating? And you really have to ask yourself, you're in the position of leadership, have we been clear in our communication? Have we been consistent in our training? Have we actually held people accountable to the right things? And something I learned early on too is you don't really have a culture. Everybody wants to talk about their culture. Everybody has a culture. It's just whether it's an intentional culture or not. And that's kind of the whole point of the second book, Be Intentional Culture.
In the Be Intentional Culture book hug moment, we got the hugger in the house.
Simple things that people, real world leaders have done that have failed, and things that have helped them. But, if you have data-based, so that you're not just pulling numbers and figures out of your rear end, saying, well, these people suck and these people are great. Well, can you verify that with the data? Because sometimes you may think someone's not that great, and then you look at it and you're like, actually, they're kicking everybody else's butt. I just maybe don't like them or something, or have a bad perception of them. And so It's more, I think, if you adapt that to culture-wise, if you have a culture of performance, a culture of accountability, like, hey, we're going to talk about the tough things. We're going to support each other, but we're going to talk about it honestly. And data helps too. Maybe you've been kicking butt and you have a bad month. That happens, right? It could be something personal or professional, maybe a simple tweak. Maybe a customer really got after an employee and that they've kind of in the dumps or something like that. But culture-wise, you bring people that want to achieve the same things, want to grow, and that becomes infectious. Whereas on the flip side, you bring, you have a good team and you bring somebody in. I think it's a Jocko Willink quote where he says basically that lowest performer becomes the baseline, and usually they drag people down to that. And that's a little tricky if you're training new people or bringing new people in. They're going to be low performers for a period of time, right? While you're training them and getting them into the swing of things. But if they're hungry, they're showing people that they're willing to learn and they're working hard, that's different. They can, be hungry, working hard, willing to learn, and it's going to take them some time. But they're part of the culture, part of driving things forward. They're going to learn from those other people like Zach was talking about. Or they're just sitting, well, in our other company, we used to blah, blah, blah. Well, go back to that other company then, knock it off, unless it's something that needs to improve the team. So anyways, hope this has been helpful. Something I've been kind of chewing on. Actually that Steve Jobs quote, I've been thinking a lot about that as it relates to, how I approach some things and whether I believe in the A player thing or if it's more of a culture deal. So we will be at the Experience this week down in Vegas. If you're not aware of that, that's a industry trade show. Happens twice a year, once on the East Coast, usually in spring, the West Coast here in Vegas, usually in the fall. It's a good excuse to go to Vegas. There's lots of breakouts and trainings. I'll be on a panel.
Not back in the spray battle, I'll tell you what.
Our good friend Pete Consigli is putting on the winter break in February, end of third week in February. If I remember right, 16th to the 20th. So we'll get the details out there for you for that. Pete's events are always phenomenal from a networking standpoint, and I always learn tons. He just has a way of packing in just people that are bringing the heat.
It's going to be fabulous.
Then in April in Savannah, Georgia, which I'm excited to visit. I hear is really beautiful. The Restoration Industry Association, they're going to have their conference. And again, packed with information, opportunities to network with other contractors and vendors, and just cool to see our community continue to grow. I think, I don't remember if they set records for attendance again last year, but they did set records for new people, like first-time attendees. Actually met somebody in Washington that just started in mitigation restoration, and we met in Florida of all places, and so we've since been able to, we actually interviewed him for the podcast. So H2O is a company that's established and actually sold, and the owners are still involved with that process. And then Mark and his wife, they'll be coming up. We'll be getting some of that content out and hearing from somebody that's starting out their business, from scratch. So that's all coming from the DYOJO Podcast. Thank you for listening. The DYOJO is the Do Your Own Job Dojo.
That's what you need for a team to be successful. Everyone to do their own
dang job. You do your
dang
job. I'm doing my
dang
job. We have a fighting chance. That's a wrap for this episode. I'm John Isaacson, and it's been a pleasure sharing insights to help you shorten that dang learning curve.
This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
If we have been helpful, please like,
share, comment, and subscribe.
If you'd like to learn more about our education and outreach efforts, please check out our website, thedyojo.com. My 5 books for the skilled trades can be purchased through Amazon, including my latest, P2T, Preparing to Thrive in the Modern Workplace, which was written to help employers and young professionals build success together.
Wow, that's real good, buddy.
Thanks to our guests and sponsors for making this possible. Until next time, keep thriving in the trades.
DYOJO Podcast, over and out.